Hey, vinyl community, Jeff here, and I know I'm very late to this party, but hey, better late than never, they say, right? Jumping on the 2024 vinyl tag that Rob started. I've seen people doing them. I've been wanting to do it. It's a little different to try to do something where it's intense with all these questions versus just showing records. So it took me a little bit of time to formulate my thoughts, get all the stuff written down, and I probably still have some disjointed thoughts here, but let's get into this. Don't want to make it too terribly long, and I think I've got a good majority of the answers for this thing. So anyway, yeah, so let's check it out. So favorite album bought in 2023. Now, I'm not sure if that means just an album bought or if that means an album that was released in 2023. The one he showed, I don't think was released in 2023, but it might be. Maybe it was an old concert. I don't know. This is a reissue that came out in 2023 on vinyl, I think for the first time, or at least for the first time in the U.S. Not even in the U.S. First time I could get a hold of. Impellitteri Screaming Symphony. I showed it a couple months ago when I got it. I've loved this album since it came out back in the 90s. And so when they started reissuing the Impellitteri albums this year, there's like 3 or 4 that came out. I picked them all up, looking forward to more coming out. So this is one of my favorite purchases of 2023. Now, last record that I bought in 2023, Made in Japan Live by Dream Theater. I'm basing all of these dates on when I logged them into Discogs. I'm pretty tight on that. When an album comes in, almost while I'm playing it or before I play it, I'm logging it in Discogs if it's listed there already. This was listed and logged into Discogs at the very end of December, like on the 31st. So this came in, another one of those series from there, but that I am showing is the last album I logged into Discogs in 2023. Released 2 albums in the same year. Now, initially I thought it was 2 albums in 2023, but going back and the way it was worded, but going back and listening to him again, what he said it can be in a year. 2023 would have been a little bit harder, but you could pick an artist that was involved in multiple albums, and I could have went with maybe some that had different projects that came out in the same year. I'm thinking like Michael Sweet from Stryper had this Sweet and Lynch. He had the Stryper album, blah, blah, blah. But then he said it can be in a year. So I just went for the easy to remember one. And there could have been 2 choices here, but that's Kiss. You had their first album and their second album released in 1974. They one was like in March and one was like in October. So, and then they did it again in like 1976 when they had Destroyer and Rock and Roll Over came out within a few months of each other, or within the same year. So that's those 2. Now, number 4, if you could only listen to one decade of music, this was tough, and I'm siding with what Rob was saying. He said 80s or 70s, and that's me. I'm obviously an 80s kid. People are going to say, Jeff, you're an 80s kid. You're going to listen to hair metal, right? Yeah, I probably will. But as I've gotten older, I've gotten more into and more appreciative of 70s music. So I don't know. I mean, there are times I just want to kick back and listen to good old hard rock. Early heavy metal, hard rock. So I could probably sustain myself with the 70s. But I'm going to go with the obvious answer and say the 80s, just because the 80s there's so many great bands that I would do. So I could survive. Everything from pop to metal, it's the 80s. So let's go with the 80s. But it's tough. Anyway, a band or artist from Manchester, I admit, not being from there, around there, I had to kind of look this up. I noticed 1 or 2 that I could do, then I realized I didn't have very many albums by bands that were over there, so I went with the Bee Gees. They are listed as being there. I was going to go with Andy Gibb because I have some Andy Gibb albums, same band, same brothers. So anyway, went with the Bee Gees. I'm always on the lookout for the early Bee Gees stuff because, I grew up listening to the disco Bee Gees, and that's all I knew until I started discovering the older stuff, and I realized, wow, these guys, when they started off, they sound a lot like the Beatles and all those and some other psych bands. So I'm always on the lookout for the older stuff. I got that as VCLT, or no, it was a contest I won a while back from Bill. A band listened to the most in 2023. This is tough because I get a lot of music, and unfortunately, music comes in so fast, new music, that you listen a little bit and you put it aside. I get CDs, I get vinyl, I get digital, and how much do I spend listening to a lot of them? And it's really sad. It's really sad that doesn't get to spend as much time. But I would have to say probably on any given year, at least for the past couple years, I'm going with Neal Morse. He did have a new album came out, but on top of his normal albums that he puts out with the Neal Morse Band, with the Neal Morse solo stuff, and Transatlantic and Flying Colors, and him and this guy doing this music, and then he's got him and DiVigilio and those guys, and so he's had at least 2 or 3 albums out last year. On top of that, I'm a member of his fan club, and every 2 months I get something new, whether it be a video or some kind of a recording, live recording demos, things like that. So I get something from Neal every 2 months on top of all the albums he releases. So I'm going to have to say probably still spend more time listening to Neal's music in any given year, at least recently. Then he went to see 7 inches. I don't really buy a lot of 7 inches. I think the stipulation originally was 7 in 2023, but I found that I actually bought about 5. So I got the new Haunt one that I showed. This came out just a couple months ago. Hell Tracks is a couple songs by Haunt. That came out. Then there were actually, I'm going to show all 4, even though only 3 came out in 2023, and then one was before that. But the 4 by Ritual Servant that came out, and they form a picture if you put them all together. There were 4 singles by them, each having 2 songs as usual, and then those 8 songs were released on an actual album. But this is the only vinyl release for the album, are the 4 singles, so that's 5. And then I'm going to throw this one. This came in last year too. Yeah, the Leather Duchess. I don't think it came out last year. I think I bought it last year. I think it might have been a little older, but I held off on buying it. Leather Duchess single. And then this one I did buy last year, even though it wasn't a release last year, and that's Captain Beyond. This is a single that has a couple songs on it that were extra songs that weren't on albums, but they've been put out on various different vinyl releases. But this one was reissued not too long ago. This one is not last year. This is a couple years ago. But hey, she's a VC member, so Madam X. So if you know who that is, she makes videos, has for quite a while. And I bought this from her, and she sent that along. So Jeff, you rule. Anyway, it's even got a little handwritten note in there. Great stuff. So I just figured let's throw it to the VC there. All right. For dinner guests, this is tough. I'm not a big fan of these type of questions. I didn't pull any albums for this because there are a lot of people that'd be neat to hang out with. I don't know why though. I've met a lot of stars. I've met a lot of musicians over the years. And you know what they say, don't meet your heroes, right? Would be cool to hang out with these people, but they may be great on stage and everything, but you end up meeting them and they're just, I find that all these people that I've met, stars, movie stars, music stars, they're just broken people like me, and they've got issues in the same. There's nothing really that I feel they could necessarily instill or give to me. Now, if it was music business news, then, maybe, if I want advice on doing this, but I'm not that much into being a musician in that sense. I would love to hang out with, obviously there's some of my stars from the childhood that I'm sure people have said they're not the greatest people to hang out with. There's people like, I'd love to see David Cassidy. I was going to go see him live, but it was way too expensive. And then the next year he died and I didn't get to see him. But, I've heard stuff about his character. Gene and Paul from Kiss. That'd be great to hang out with them. Peter and Ace would be great. Things like that. There's obviously the childhood fantasy dreams of a guy, just I want to meet Lita Ford from the 80s and convince her to marry me or Joan Jett or any, you got all those fantasy meets, but that's not going to happen. So I don't know. What would I want to get from him? Yeah, it'd be great to hang out with Ronnie James Dio. Belief systems would clash there. So I don't know. Larry Norman would be a great one. He's one of the grandfathers of Christian rock. He's quirky. Keith Green, who passed away tragically when he was young in a plane crash. Love all of his albums. There's a lot of things like that. I don't know. I can't decide on that because I don't know what I'd want to get from them. So I'm going to kind of bypass that with all that rambling. So let's pass on with that. One person that was lost during 2023, Charlie Dominici, the original singer from Dream Theater, did one album and he passed away this year. So yeah, that was kind of sad news. And so there you go. He is a artist that we lost. Only listen to music from one country. That would be tough. If I could pick one continent and I could say Europe, that would cover so much classic stuff. The UK would cover a lot of classic stuff, but you're missing Germany on it. Europe as a whole would cover more of it. I'm going to have to stick with the U.S. just because it's my homeland and it's what I know the most. I guess I couldn't see giving up the U.S. artists, even though, I mean, the bulk of a lot of the great ones that come to mind are like from the U.K. and, you know, you got all the original hard rockers and stuff. Really tough, but I guess I would say U.S. just because there's so many great ones that I probably couldn't see losing access to. 3 channels I discovered in 2023. This is tough. I'm pretty sure I discovered all these. Some of these I discovered real recently. Racer Records, I discovered him literally a couple. I did the Kiss tag. I discovered him shortly before the Kiss tag. I discovered him because of Gambler 812, who had done the Kiss tag, but I had heard of him weeks before because he was on somebody else's channel also, and so that was kind of, I think I discovered him and then finally found his channel because it's not his name, but anyway, so those are 2, and then George G's Room of Rock I discovered probably in the past less than a year ago, months ago, 6-8 months ago. So I mean, there's so many, it's kind of a blur as to, because I'm just like, did I know them before? Have I seen them before? Because people, the names pop up, and I'm trying to think of the ones I definitely subscribed to in the past few months. So there you go. Number 12, a record that we bought when we were a teen. Okay. I literally, now this is a tough, this could be interpreted 2 different ways. Does it have to be a record that I bought as a teen that are the physical copies that I have right now? Or is it an album that I bought in the teen that I now own the reissue or have rebought since then? I'm going with the literal term, album I bought as a teen, because when I was a teen, I went in the military, I took all of my records with me except about 20. They were just, I was mainly into metal, and I left behind 20 albums at home. So then in the 80s, when all of my albums got thrown away and destroyed, of course, the ones at home in storage that my parents had still existed. And then eventually they gave them back to me later in my life. And I carried them around forever. Even though I didn't buy records anymore, I still carried them around in my storage and I still have them. So when I started getting back into records, into buying vinyl, I still have them. These literally have been purchased in my teens. So, and they still exist and they are here. So I got Stevie Nicks. I bought this when it came out in my teens, and I bought both Men at Work. One I got for Christmas, one I bought. One of them I think I won from radio station locally, but all 3 of these exist from my collection when I was a teen. A funk or soul record. Haha, let's kill this out with something totally different. Soul Station, Paul Stanley. You got a little Kiss soul here. Great album. He does some great classics, and he does some other styles of soul with this amazing band and lineup. So there you go. That's, in my opinion, a soul album. One of the few that I do own. All right, a record everyone has that you assume everyone has, and a record that somebody probably doesn't have. Most everybody has Frampton Comes Alive. There used to be a joke going around that when you moved into a neighborhood, they issued this album to you. It's an album that just everybody had to have back in the day. I got it gifted to me at some point, so I have it. There are probably a lot of ideas in there. One that you don't think anybody has. I bought this the other day. Didn't know it existed. Never seen it. And I doubt anybody out there other than me would pick it up. And that's David Cassie's Greatest Hits. I don't think I've even shown this. I picked this up like a week or 2 ago. Did I show it in a video? I don't know. Maybe I didn't. Anyway, literally like 2 weeks ago. David Cassie's Greatest Hits I thought was going to be David Cassie's solo stuff, but it's not. It's a mixture of David Cassie's solo stuff and some Partridge Family. So, interesting. I thought I'd rescue it. It was only a couple bucks, so I went ahead and grabbed it. Cleaned it up. Fun stuff. You know, I have all the records. Why do I need that? I don't know. Greatest Hits. Anyway, next up, Female Artists 2023 buy. Came out in 2022. I bought it in 2023. Leather, one of the most awesome female metal vocalists. She got her start, at least in my knowledge, back in the days with David Chastain and the band Chastain. And she did great albums with him. Then she disappeared for a while, and he continued on with other great female singers. And then she resurfaced a couple years ago. She has put out some solo albums. This is her latest. Came out, I think, near the end of 2022, and I bought it in 2023. And it's just, you know, gutsy, strong. You know, she's like the female Dio, in my opinion. She's got a raspy voice, and she can just knock it out of the park, and I love her stuff. So that's 2023 album. Number 16, favorite video posted. This is tough. I posted so many videos because I do overkill. But I did look back, and I found that my album's on the 20 album chain. was one of the more interesting ones to do. You had to pick 20 albums that in some way connected one to another, and they built a chain. And so that was kind of neat. That was started by Noble Records, and I jumped on that. That was a fun one to do because it was a little more thinking than just show and tell. And a video I saw last year that I really enjoyed. I'm not going to answer this because I don't have. There are a lot of videos, and there are a lot of videos that have said things that I, have sought to apply to some of my collecting. There's a lot of funny videos, but to pick one, I can't. I don't know. I've seen so many, I can't tell. I'm just going to have to, wash right over that one. So, all right. Number 17, a 90s classic. I'm going with Kiss, 1992, because in the 80s, Kiss did the whole glammy, poppy thing that some people love, like I love, some people don't love. And when they came back to Revenge, it was just straight up probably one of their heaviest albums. And I think it's a classic album for sure. So yeah, I'm not a big fan of the 90s grunge movement, so I'm not going to go that route, but that's in my opinion. There's a lot of great albums from the 90s that I consider classics. All right, a number 18, an album you would like to walk into the cover for. Oh, wait, that's not it. No, that's not the one. This one, yeah. What is this? This is Larry Norman. I mentioned a minute ago, the grandfather of Christian rock. The thing I like about this, not only is it him on the cover, but and it's a record store, which would be really cool. It's a record store that has records, Afro shop, jewelry, records, jazz, albums. It says just all these things aside. But here's the thing. This store is in the town next to mine. Don't think it's still there. It was in the 70s. I'd like to walk into that and go into that store in the 70s. Of course, records would have been great to buy in the 70s, 77-ish or so when this taken, somewhere in the mid-70s. So that'd be cool to walk into this at that time, go to that record store, which, like I said, was supposedly over in Norfolk, here in Virginia. And so that would be really cool to relive that moment, to go in there with him. So anyway, that's why I picked that. Number 19, it's like a greatest hits album. So an album that you know so well that it's just like a greatest hits. It's not a greatest hits, it's like a greatest hits. It's 52nd Street. I would almost say Stranger, 52nd Street, or Glass Houses, in my opinion, sound like greatest hits. I absorbed them so much as a kid. This one has a lot of hits on it, though. So you got Big Shot and Honestly and all that. So there are a lot of hits on here. But to me, every song is a hit. I absolutely love this album. I absolutely love Glass Houses. Absolutely love Stranger. So there you go, 52nd Street. And then number 20, a album from 1974, which means it turns 50 this year. Lots of albums. The Kiss album the two Kiss albums I showed were both 50. Lots of great 74 albums that came out, Deep Purple and all that. I went with the really obscure one only because of the memories I have. Phantom of the Paradise. This is a soundtrack to a movie, Phantom of the Paradise, that came out in 1974 that I saw in the theater probably, I think if my mind remembers, 7 or 8 times. Now, mind you, 1974, I was 8 years old. My brothers had to take me. It's a scary movie near the end. Not so much now because it's kind of cheesy. But musical, all kinds of music, from the doo-woppy stuff to, just fun rock and roll. And this movie was so impactful on me as a kid. Obviously, it's a play on Phantom of the Paradise, Phantom of the Opera. It's a play on that. Guy burns his face, wears a mask. But I fell in love with the songs. I fell in love with the cast. I fell in love with the movie. Brian De Palma movie from the 70s. Didn't know who he was back then. Loved this movie. Still love it. Tracked down the Blu-ray edition with bonus reunion clippages, and there's a big cult following to this movie. Beth over at Miss 80s picked this up for me in a store and sent it to me as VCLT. Absolutely phenomenally love this album, and it's 50, which means that I'm old enough to be 50 years older. Great stuff. Anyway, that's it. Let's cut it off here. That's it. Jump on. If you haven't jumped on already, then you're late like me. But is there really a late? No. Let's do it. Anyway, thanks a lot for watching. Rock on and rock hard.